Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games back with another cool arcade game repair video for you. Joey, what have you got here?
Asteroids. Isn't it beautiful?
It's a little rough. Where'd you pick this up?
Got in a lot of some stuff. I don't remember.
It's an Asteroids cocktail table, and it's kind of a little rough, but it looks completely fixable to me. So we're going to fix it. Somebody has added some lockdown bars to it, or lock bars to it on the side. So that'll be going. The door is just hanging open, but there's a board in it that looks pretty good, actually. Let's see what this tag says on it. Well, I found your problem. She's unplugged. That would explain it. The monitor's unplugged. It says, good board works. And it's, need checks cashed? Robco check cashing service. Bessemer City, Gastonia Highway. If the banks won't cash it, try us. ID required, only a 2% fee. We cash tax refund, rapid refund, government, insurance, and payroll checks. Monday through Saturdays, 8 to 7. So maybe that's where it was. What do you think? There's a little tin pan in there. Joe, there's a quarter in it. Woohoo! I think the mice have been to it. Well, the quarter's from 1977. That's what it sounded like. All right, let's see if we can get the top open, and then we'll look at the monitor, I guess. The control panels have plexiglass on them, which has preserved the artwork. So we'll be removing that. Wow, that's pretty good. The top is destroyed, though. The glass is all right, but the underlay, like the artwork under it, not good. So, okay, so we're going to open it up, clean it out, vacuum it out a little bit, and then we'll start working through it like we always do, starting with the power brick. So Joey stopped cleaning. Joe?
That's it. I ain't going to keep cleaning until you get it working.
Okay, so we got to fix it before he'll clean it up. You can see it's going to clean up pretty good, though. It's got the authentic cigarette burns and stuff. This thing's going to be nice. High end.
Top of the line.
Top of the line. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is I'm going to pull out the power brick in the bottom. And we're going to go ahead and replace the big blue. We're not even going to plug it up. Because, you know, we're going to do that kind of stuff anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and replace it. So there's probably problems with power brick. We're going to check all the fuses and everything, but we got to pull it out to do that. Now, I think the very first thing we'll do is go ahead and pop the monitor out of it because it's just sitting in there. They don't even have screws in it. And that'll help us get to the power brick. So we'll pull that out the top and get the power brick out of there and put it on the bench and check it out. All right, so here is our power brick. We're going to clean out the bottom of the cabinet while it's out. They've got heavy dust on everything, okay? But it looks pretty good. It's just real dusty and dirty and old. So the first thing we'll do is just clean it up a little bit. This is the big blue, they call it, this capacitor here, and it has this little diode board on the bottom of it in an Asteroids. The later ones had a bridge rectifier down here, but they're doing it with just 2 diodes. So we are going to maybe upgrade those and swap this big blue capacitor. But the first thing I'll do is clean this off and get it looking a little better, and we'll go from there. Okay, so this thing is completely original. We had to cut it out. The zip ties were still holding the harness to the power supply. It's never been removed, so nobody's ever been under it. And these original rectifier diodes are MR750s. That's a 6 amp 50 volt diodes. We're going to replace those with some 6A4 diodes, which are 6 amp 400 volt diodes. It's not really because we're trying to up the voltage. It's just what I have, and it's just a modern equivalent, basically. So that's what we're going with. So I'm going to go ahead and swap those. The reason I'm swapping them is because I've had trouble with these before. I've had machines where these were leaking or whatever they do. They were starting to act up. So I go ahead and swap them whenever I do one of these. Like I said, on the little bit newer Asteroids has this same type of block, but it has a bridge rectifier down here. And if it's got the bridge, I don't ever replace it. But if it's got these discrete diodes, I go ahead and swap them. So I'm going to take out the 750s and put in 6A4s. So here are the 6A4s. Good to go. I'm going to put in the new big blue here. I'll show you that after we get it all bolted in and everything. Putting that back together. Here's the one that we pulled out. They're both made the exact same week. The 35th week of 1980. So this machine would have been built in late 80, which would have been probably one of the last Asteroids. I guess they did the cocktails last or something. They were almost on the Asteroids Deluxe by then, but the original one I think came out in 70, was it 78 or 79, Joe? I think 79.
79, yep.
I think. But they were both made the same week, but one of them's green and one of them's blue, just to make it interesting. Okay, so we got the new big blue in. It's now the big black. This is the 27,000 microfarad 15 volt DC cap. It's used to filter the 10 volt that is used to make the 5 volt. So if you have problems where it's resetting and doing weird stuff, a lot of times it's that cap. You can measure the ripple on it, the AC ripple on it, but we just replace it so it's reliable. The thing's old, 40 years old now. And it's running all the IC chips basically. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is clean up this fuse block, literally just clean it, and then check the fuses to make sure they're all good and the right value. So I cleaned all those up, and they were all correct, and we're all still good. This one is also a 7 amp. Oh, and if you want to know what value they are, it's actually printed on the case there. This is also a 7 amp. It was also fine. And then these are little jumpers to set the voltage. Depending on where you are, if you put a jumper in, it will make the block run on a different voltage. So the input is here, transformer, filter cap with the diodes, and then get 5 fuses and voltage going out here over to like the power supply. This little jumper just basically changes some of the windings on the transformer. This is a connection for AC. So on this one, probably a fan is ran there, and then these connections are for the switches, like the on-off switch and the service switch. Whenever the door opens, it opens a switch, which turns everything off. But we're about ready to go, so we're going to put it back in there and move on to the next piece of the puzzle. All right, so after the power runs through that power block, the transformer block, it runs up here to this power supply, which is Atari's regulator audio board, also known as the AR1. I don't know why everybody always calls it the AR, because it should be the RA1. Why do they do that, Joe?
I don't know.
I've never understood that. Like the AR2 is the later version, is the longer one. They call it the AR2, but it's really the RA2. It's a regulator audio board. 2. All right, so this is the RA1. And it handles the 5 volts, and it also handles the audio. So it has the amps on it. So there's 2 audio amps here. And then this is our 5 volt regulator. Or I guess it's not necessarily a regulator. Is that a power regulator, or is that just a bottle cap that works with that? I think that's the power regulator, but it needs that. Anyway, here's what you do. Okay. Some people suggest replacing that, the 2N3055. I never do if the thing's still working. They do have a thing where sometimes they short the 12 volt input to the output. So sometimes they will send out 12 volts instead of 5 volts. but it doesn't happen enough that I've like replace all of them. So I'm going to leave it if it tests fine. So we're going to test that and see if it seems all right. We're going to test this transistor. We're not going to worry about the audio amps. Usually they're fine, and we'll find out if they're not. Knock on the particle board. And the capacitors, you don't really have to replace the capacitors on the power supply. Something about them, they just don't get stressed much, so usually they're fine. So we're not going to worry about that. We used to recap them all the time, but it doesn't really help anything. And then the last thing that we do is sometimes we will do the sense mod, but I don't even know if Asteroids had the sense problem. Did it have the sense thing, Joey?
I don't know.
He don't know.
It's broke.
It's broke. We know that. So I think we'll leave that alone. We won't worry about the sense mod. Basically, some of the Atari games had a sense voltage that came back. It was more on the AR2s, I think. And it would automatically adjust the voltage depending on what voltage came back on that sense line. It was so if there was a problem with the edge connector and there was some voltage drop, it could sense it and turn it up. But I think on these, I don't have the schematics here in front of me. These may have not even had it. It was definitely on the second one, though. This one, I don't see anything labeled sense, so maybe not. So, we're going to resolder these. I'm going to check the transistors to see if anything seems off. It looks pretty freaking clean to me. Sometimes you have to replace this 5-volt potentiometer. Those are they're a little bit chintzy. But we don't know that yet, so everything looks pretty good. So let me resolder these, make sure they're in there good, and check the two transistors. Okay, that literally took like 2 minutes. The same song's playing. So I just resoldered the connectors. Make sure they're good. The reason you do that is because when you remove the connectors, it flexes it, and it can break the pins loose of the solder, but they look fine. This bottle cap tests fine. This tests fine. So use my diode check on the meter. I'm getting a good voltage drop across the pins, so everything seems fine, but we won't really know till we put it in and test for voltages, which is next. So we're going to pop it back in the machine, and then we're going to unplug the monitor. We got it removed, actually, and we're going to unplug the board so that this can't fry anything if the voltages are wrong. And then we're going to check the voltages coming out of the power supply here. Okay, so looking at the schematics, yes, there is a sense line on these as well. And you can see it in effect here. So we've turned it on. The only voltage that comes out of that is 5 volts. There is like a 36 volts that comes over the board from the power brick, but just 5 on that. So I'm on the lugs, and I have the board unplugged just in case it was way off, so it won't fry anything. We also have the monitor out and unplugged, so the power brick can't send any weird voltages to the monitor. So the 5 volt with the game on and nothing plugged in is 6.41 volts. And that's not just because there's no load, it's because the sense circuit is going nuts. So it's sensing 0 volts because nothing's plugged in. So it sends 5 volts out to the board and then sends it back on a smaller wire. And if it's not getting 5 volts back, like maybe it's only getting 4.8 volts back, it turns up it adjusts the power up a little bit. So about as high as it can adjust it, I suppose, is 6.41. So that's about normal if you have the board unplugged. So we're going to turn it back off, plug the board in, which will give it the load and the sense line back, and we'll see if it's anywhere near 5. But we were just checking to make sure it's not 12 or something crazy. Okay, so she's tripping, but you can see on the power supply, the voltage is measuring 5.3 now with the board plugged in, okay? So we're also going to check the voltage at the board and see what it's at, but you can hear it resetting and tripping and going crazy. So on the board we're getting 5.1. Okay, so that's pretty good. So it should run at 5.1. You could turn it down a little bit if you want, but it's 5.3 over there, 5.1 over here, so it's losing voltage in the line. We cleaned the edge connector a little bit, but we might clean it a little more. But it should be up and running at 5.1. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to remove the board and we're going to clean the socketed chips to see if that gets us anywhere. Let me see if I can start it though. I mean, it might be running. It just doesn't sound like it. I got a service button here, I guess. Hit start, Joe.
Solid LEDs.
Just solid LEDs? Okay, well, it might not credit it up then. Ain't that what it does when it has no credit on it? Oh, it might be. Now what?
Solid.
Okay. So the watchdog isn't even resetting or anything? Nothing different?
Nope.
All right. Okay, so next step, we take the board out where we'll try cleaning the chips on that first. Okay, so before I pulled it out, I checked the voltages over here too. So if you check, this is all the ground plane, right? So if you check DC, this one will have 25 volts, or I think it's negative 25. Negative 25 volts going in and negative 15 coming out. Okay. This one will have, I think, 12 going in and 5 going out. And then this one will have 25 volts going in and 15 coming out. And they were all doing their thing. So you can check for those voltages actually on the legs there. I don't think there's specific test points for the 15 volts and the negative 15 volts, but you can actually check them on the transistors if you're careful. And all of that was correct. If that's messed up, I think the game will still boot. It just you won't see it on the screen because that's what runs the XY out. But here's what I was talking about cleaning the chips. This game's been sitting somewhere. I mean, this thing's been parked for 30 years at least. I mean, I would bet money nobody's messed with this since the 90s. Or even older. But if you look, see how the chips, the legs are really tarnished. So it's not, you know, here's your CPU. If it's tarnished too, I haven't pulled it out yet, you're not going to, basically it's not even going to run program. So he was saying that the LEDs on the start buttons were solid. There's a watchdog program in this that will usually make those blink because they stay on solid whenever it's waiting for a credit. When you put a credit on it, the first player starts blinking. If you put 2 credits on it, both of them start blinking, right? So you've got about 3 different phases, 3 different ways that they can signal you. If they're just solid on, that kind of mean and whenever you credit it, nothing credits up. That kind of means it's not even running program or not even trying to. If it is blinking over and over again, it could be that it has credits on it or it's on free play. It's ready to go. If it's blinking really fast, that usually means that it's tripping the watchdog over and over again. I hope I don't have that backwards. And I think they're on, and then whenever you put a credit on it, they start blinking. But it could be that they're off, and when you put a credit on it, they start blinking. But anyway, we'll figure it out here in a little bit. But these chips are obviously very dirty, so it can't even read the program ROMs. So without that, it probably doesn't even have enough info to run the watchdog. I don't know how the reset works, but so we're going to clean all that, and I'll show you how they look. So here's the CPU. It's not bad, but it is pretty icky. So I'm going to clean the sides of it. I use a little file and just lightly clean the junk off of it. Some people use like a chemical or something. So if you think that's the right way to do it, you do you, man. So I'm going to clean it and put it back in and keep working through them. So this is typical. You can see that the part that was down in the socket is still fairly clean because it was actually touching the socket blade. But the rest of it's just crazy tarnished. So if one little pin isn't touching right, the game won't boot. So we're going to clean that up, put it back in. Now the sockets themselves, you know, sometimes you have to replace those too, but they don't have the same problem with the tarnish. See how it's still shiny? So we may end up with a bad socket or something, but for now we're just going to clean the chips and put them back in. And if that doesn't get us up and going, we'll start troubleshooting the board. Okay, we've cleaned them all. They're still solid on. Let's see if I'm hitting like the service switch. That's not changing anything. Trying to put it in and out of test. Doesn't seem to be changing anything. All right, so we're going to have to break out the logic probe and see what we can figure out. Okay, I've printed out part of the schematics. We're down here on the floor. And I have hooked up my logic probe to the 5 volt and the ground. Okay. Now, if you need a logic probe, a little cheapo, or if you need a patented chip extractor. This is what we use to pull the chips out. You can use a bent screwdriver, but it ain't as good as this one. If you need any little tools like this, go check out our website. Go to lionsarcade.com. We have a parts page on there, and on our parts page, we have a bunch of little stuff like that. A lot of them are listed on Amazon. So if you click the link, it takes you to Amazon. If you buy anything from Amazon, even if it's not what the link takes you to, it gives us a tip. So we appreciate that. People have been doing it a lot. This is right before Christmas in 2021 that we're recording this, and people have been buying a lot of stuff lately using those links, and we get like a little teeny nibble every time they do that. So we appreciate that.
I would like to thank the guy who bought the garage door opener.
Yeah, a guy bought a garage door opener the other day for like $1,000. That's pretty cool. Okay, so the first thing we're going to check on this MPU is this right here, the clock line. Seems to me like this machine ain't doing much of nothing. Here is the crystal. Without a clock line, it won't do crap. So we're going to check pin 37 on the CPU. So it's a 40-pin chip. There's 20 pins on each side. The last pin over here is number 40. Right? So we're going to come back to 37, 39, 38, 37. All right. It has a clock signal. So it ain't the clock, Joe. I was hoping it was. Now, it might be the wrong clock signal, but it does have a clock signal. So the next thing we're going to check is this, pin 40, which is the reset signal. Okay. This is a 6502, by the way. Pin 40 is high. Now I wish I had enough fingers to reach over. Oh, I think I can do it. Okay. Ah. Okay, so when I hit the reset button, it goes low and then high. That's what it's supposed to do. So the thing is kind of running. Maybe we just can't credit it up. Maybe it's up and playing. Maybe none of the controls are working or something. All right. Yeah, because we should be getting like the watchdog making it reset. I wonder if they've disabled the watchdog. Here's the watchdog disable. Interesting. It's almost running. I wonder if the dip switches are set wrong or something. Usually, if the ROMs are a problem, it'll come up and it'll reset over and over again, and this watchdog will be toggling back and forth. But we're not getting that. Very interesting. Okay, so we're going to keep looking through. It's very strange. I put it on free play, and still you can't get you've got your lights just locked on. It's not watchdogging. We're getting activity on most of all the data lines, all of the address lines except for this one, A9, but sometimes when those higher ones aren't doing anything, it's because it's something else going on. If I try to put it in test, I can't get it to do anything. And we hooked up the scope to it just to see if we're getting any kind of video output. And we are not. So next thing I'm gonna try is I'm just gonna swap in another 6502 to see if we get any kind of difference with that. Now we're getting somewhere. So we swapped in another 6502. Okay. So now we're getting all kinds of crazy stuff on the scope. So basically I'm using this trying to use it as an XY monitor. If I can find what I just had. So there's crap going all over the place. So basically it's trying to draw what it's supposed to, but there's just stuff everywhere, right? So let me show you what the LEDs are doing on the start buttons. Okay, so see how fast they're flashing? That's because it's watchdogging. That's what we were looking for. If it flashes slower, it means it's on free play. But what it's doing is it's resetting over and over and over again. So about once every half second or something like that. So let's check the watchdog line to prove it. So now if we check pin 40, it's watchdogging. So that's what we wanted it to do. That's actually a good thing. So something about this 6502, which does look a little messed up. See how the top of it's kind of almost looks heat damaged or something? Something about that was making it where it couldn't watchdog. I don't know. Okay, so now that it's doing that, we're going to throw it in test and see if we get any RAM errors, because it's very common in these for some of the RAM to be bad, and the RAM will make it do this, make it watchdog. Okay? Yep. So listen, it should reset. The fourth one is low. It's telling you which RAM is bad. All right, so 4 beeps is RAM chip R4. I have socketed it and replaced it, right? I guess that's why they call it the blues. The RAM stopped working. Okay, so we're going to put it back in. It's not uncommon for these to have RAM problems, and it's not uncommon for it to be more than one RAM chip. So we may put it back in and it tells us the next one. All right, we're back in there. Unfortunately, we got another code. Ah! It's doing the third one now, Joe.
Gotcha.
It's going backwards. So we replaced number 4, replaced number 3, and now... Five. And 6. Five and 6. Okay, I'm going to replace 5 first, I believe. Okay, so we replaced all 4 of those RAM. When I replaced the 5th one just for giggles, and then it stopped beeping on the 5th one and started beeping on the 6th one. But remember, it was doing the 5th and the 6th. I think they all kind of work in pairs, so sometimes it does stuff like that. There were 2 that it didn't throw flags on, which are basically like the work RAM. They were fine. These are like the vector RAM. Okay, so did that, turned it on. Now when it comes up, you just get a beep. And if you hit the buttons, now they're old and dirty. Eventually you get noises. Okay, so then hook up the scope. And we're getting the crosshatch that you get when everything's up and running. So that's the test menu. We're going to swap it into gameplay and see what happens. There we are, very cool. So it's turned sideways. I've got the probes reversed. Let me reverse the probes and mess with that a little bit. That's more like it. So because I'm using an LCD and just the way this scope works, you get all the retrace lines where it's drawing the vectors in, so you can't get a super clear picture on it. If you had one of the old ones that's like a tube one, you can, and I think there's some of the more high-end, more modern ones can get a really clear image on it. But as you can see, it appears everything is up and running. Joe, go around to the other side and see if you can play it a little bit. Looks like it's saying push start. Player 1. So cool. All right, so there you go, folks. So I think we got the board running, both the power brick working, the power supply working. So we still got cosmetic stuff to do, and we still have to work on the monitors. So we'll do that in the next video. So leave your comments below. Let us know what you think so far. Make sure to give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you. It's the salsa. There's the salsa. You're doing pretty good. He can't see, and he's doing that good. That's pretty good, Joe. I think you beat my score. All right, not bad. So there you go. So leave your comments below, and we'll see you on the next video. Hope you enjoyed it.